So, my father lived his life unfiltered, unapologetically, and left nothing on the table. For me to speak about him in any other terms would be a disservice to him. In the simplest of terms, my dad was perfectly imperfect. My father was many things to many people, and I can only begin to try and articulate the man he was to me. My father loved life, and he sucked the marrow out of every morsel of it. He loved home-cooked meals, especially those followed with a great dessert. He loved music, the outdoors, camping, being on the water, fishing, golfing, gardening, building, as seen on TV gadgets, his country, Donald Trump, a good party, and people, especially his family. He absolutely adored his brothers and sisters, and during the times he lived with me, I witnessed this firsthand. When any of you were struggling with anything, it was all he could think about, and I would hear him talk to Aunt Janice on the phone almost daily. And if you didn't know any better, you would assume he was talking to a close friend, not his older sister. His fondest childhood memories were all spent with his siblings. At some point after this, I'm going to have a slideshow on that's clips I've taken from all of our family home videos, but there's also questions I asked him in the last couple months. And how much he loved his family is really, it'll just be playing on loop. Down here, it's also on the card. Hard, honest work was something my father held in extremely high regard, a quality he attributed to his own father, who he loved watching work in the garage. He was extremely respected in his profession for never cutting corners. Of all the traits in life a person could possess, both professionally and personally, he believed that honesty and being a man of your word was the most important. He would explain, if you can't complete a job on time, you don't make excuses. You communicate honestly with your client. He always told me that it only takes one time being caught in a lie to ruin one's reputation, and he was greatly admired and respected for adhering to this rule. He was a perfectionist, and everything he did with everything he had. Parties at our house were always extravagant, with tons of food, a perfectly groomed lawn, and loud music. As many of you will recall, in an attempt to prolong the frequent parties at our house, he fastened an enormous light to the top of one of the trees in our yard. He got the light at a car dealer he had done construction work for, and its intended purpose was to illuminate an entire parking lot. From our tree, it illuminated the entire cul-de-sac. Everything my dad did was in excess, from his work to his hobbies to our school projects. Unfortunately, his proclivity for excess also extended to vices. My father was a social chameleon, and this is one of the qualities I admired most about him. He saw and accepted people for who they were, with no judgments or preconceptions. He could be hanging out on a bar stool, shooting the breeze with the local drunk one day, and out on the golf course with the owner of a Fortune 500 company the next. But here's the thing. He would value the time spent with each equally and show both the same level of respect. People were naturally drawn to my dad, even if you couldn't stand him upon first meeting him, which happened, believe it or not. He had an ability to eventually be able to win you over, and even if you thought he was completely full of, poop, disagreed with everything he said, you would somehow end up becoming lifelong friends. It was for this reason that every relationship he formed ended up being a lifelong one. The same reason why his work friend of only a few months, Pete Segaris, was willing to open his home to a family with 3 young girls to live in for several months while we looked for a home in Virginia Beach, effectively transforming his bachelor pad into a place where little girls could have towels hanging out the back of their pants as tails and run around playing My Little Pony. It was for this reason his roommate in Florida, Bill Rank, who unfortunately was unable to be here today, described very simply to me on the phone after my dad's passing that his life was better for having known him. In my mind, I had the perfect childhood thanks to many of you here today, and largely in part to my father, who filled our days with adventure. From driving his boat, fishing, camping, hunting for turtles and lizards, sledding, playing in dirt piles, and driving a bobcat around the neighborhood, there is nothing more I could have ever wanted in my wildest dreams. I was always proud to have a fun dad who, a perpetual child, was never one to stand by and simply spectate. 9 times out of 10, he was the one leading the fun, pushing the kids out of the way, and getting into the best kind of trouble. As a child, the greatest honor was to be right by his side in the thick of the fun. As early as I can remember, I have always had an intense desire to make my parents proud. This was never due to any pressure I felt from them, but because of the respect I had for them. When it came time to select my first instrument, I desperately tried to learn the violin, as my dad always told me how Papa Rettinger had played it, and I thought this would make my dad happy. Despite my best efforts, I struggled to catch on and decided to take up the flute, and to compensate, learned how to play every song my dad loved on it. For Halloween, middle schooler, while my peers dressed as characters popular for the time, I went to Fame of the Opera because my dad loved the musical. And for my 6th grade talent show, I managed to convince 2 of my friends to join me in performing the music of the night on our respective instruments while the other girls danced to Mariah Carey and Ace of Base. As I got older, as is the normal way of life, I began to see my dad as the person he was and not just the larger-than-life, perfect hero of my youth. My dad was keen to spend quality time, provided it was doing something that interested him. Luckily, I enjoyed most of the things he did, but a source of encouragement in school events, Girl Scouts, and other interests fell mainly on my mom. I don't believe this was ever due to any inability on his part to relate to us as girls. It was just a matter of Gary wants to do what Gary wants to do, and if you are lucky, what you are doing aligns with what he's doing. People would always ask my dad if he had hoped for a son or joked that he was 0 for 5, but he wore the father of 5 girls title like a badge of honor. If he had hoped for a son, which I'm sure he would have liked to have, I never felt it. I have always felt that my dad was enormously proud of all his girls. Granted, if one of us had graduated from med school as a neurosurgeon, he would be more likely to emphasize to someone how great you looked in your graduation photo and gloss over the neurosurgeon part. I have said many times that of everything I have accomplished in my life, that in my dad's eyes, my greatest accomplishment was marrying Will. I would say this jokingly, but there was also a lot of truth in it. It's no secret my dad was a chauvinist. I accepted that a long time ago. It's just part of who he was, and it took me a long time to understand that. To have the kind of relationship with my dad that I wanted meant playing by his rules, which I was more than happy to do because it was worth it. I had to accept that he would always be more outwardly proud of a good meal I made or taking care of my husband over any work-related accomplishment. Not necessarily what I wanted, but it was pride and love nonetheless. Instead of the magical father-daughter bonding outing you might have in your head, you got an afternoon at a bar while he held court as the life of the party. Instead of a birthday card with a heartfelt message, you got Omaha steaks. What you got from my dad may not have been what you wanted, expected, or needed, but it was love nonetheless. As his health worsened, rather than try to make up for lost time with my youngest sisters, he focused on buying scratch-off lotto tickets every day in hopes that he might win and be able to leave something behind for them. In his final months, my dad was desperate to try and find any way to secure assets that he could leave behind for his daughters. In his mind, that was his legacy and what they needed most. I think this is a very common desire, especially with men of a certain generation who saw his father able to provide for his family after his passing and felt that that was the true measure of a man. We could never convince him that time spent with him was the only thing that mattered. Leaving behind money in my dad's mind was the best way to show his love. And my relationship with my father has taught me that people love us in their own way. We can't make them love us the way we want them to. What matters is they love us, and my dad loved us. It's always been hard to talk about all the wonderful memories of my dad, especially growing up in New Jersey in front of my 2 youngest sisters, Emily and Ariel, as I know that they feel like they missed out on seeing that side of my dad. Him at his absolute best, and the wonderful moments they did get to spend with him were unfortunately when they were very young, and less than favorable memories have taken their place in the forefront of their minds. Emily and Ariel. I think you are old enough now to know that you are both happy surprises. I also think we are all mature enough to embrace the fact that having 2 more children unexpectedly, while never disappointing, is always hard. But to my youngest sisters, as vastly different as mine, Laura, and Kim's childhood was from yours, I need you to know one thing. And I mean this in the most sincere way possible. The love and happiness our father felt when you were born was not one iota less than what he felt for me, Laura, Kim, or even catching the biggest fish of his life. He adored you both until his last breath, and unfortunately, you haven't had the same advantage of time that I have to reconcile Dad's version of love, but I know in time you will, and will be able to find peace. Later in his life, he finally watched the movie Tombstone, one of my favorites, and fell in love with it. The portrayal of Doc Holliday resonated with him, and he liked to think he was just like him, and in many ways he was right. For those of you unfamiliar with him, Doc Holliday was born John Henry Holliday in 1851 and diagnosed with tuberculosis at the age of 15. He was a dentist, and later a gambler, gunfighter, and a close friend and associate of Wellman Wider, and best known for his role in the events surrounding and his participation in the gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. In an 1896 article, Wider said, "I found him a loyal friend and good company. He was a dentist whom necessity had made a gambler, a gentleman whose disease had made him a vagabond, a philosopher whom life had made a caustic wit, a long, lean, blonde fellow, nearly dead with consumption, and at the same time the most skillful gambler and nerviest, speediest, deadliest man with a six gun I ever knew. In a newspaper interview, Holiday was once asked if his conscience ever troubled him. He is reported to have said, "I coughed that up with my lungs years ago." In 1887, as he lay dying at the age of 36, Holiday is reported to have asked the nurse attending him for a shot of whiskey. When she told him no, he looked at his bootless feet, amused. The nurse said that his last words were, "This is funny." He always figured he would be killed someday with his boots on. My father experienced more before the age of 21 than most people do in a lifetime. Enlisting in the Navy at the age of 18 during the height of the Vietnam War, he saw things most of us would be lucky to never see. He also was able to visit more countries than many of us ever will. But before and after the Navy, he lived a wild life with escapades of both legal and illegal nature. He remarked to me many times that he felt he had lived a full life and had no regrets. Like Doc Holliday, he skirted death many times over, and for a while, it seemed as though nothing could kill my father, even himself. At the end, however, he too passed with his boots on, requesting vodka instead of Doc Holliday's whiskey. And at least in my mind, he will always be remembered as a legend, having lived a life befitting dime novels and folklore. My dad had an enormous amount of pride in his life and his accomplishments. When things fell apart, I would listen as he would recount his construction projects like a veteran reflecting upon his days of war, where he was considered a hero. In my mind, he was desperately trying to hold on to that life that he had led and been so proud of, and was terrified of the thought that people would view him as anything less than the great man he had been. I remember a visit he made to see me while I was at college, very close to here, during the height of his struggles. While trying to check into a local motel, his car declined, and if I remember correctly, he had also been driving a suspended license, so his ID was no good. I'll never forget how the man working at the front desk looked at my dad as if he were nothing, and the look in my dad's eyes as he registered the man's compensation. I remember wanting to jump over the desk, take the man by his collar, and yell, "Don't you know who this man is?" This man was personally requested by the Navy for their projects. He was who's who of project managers. He built most of our church, raised 5 daughters he never wanted for anything. This man is 10 times the man you will ever be. It was during these last years that I felt I needed to defend my dad's reputation, and more than anything, hoped he never, even for 1 second, felt that I was disappointed in him. In spite of everything, I'm extremely grateful for everything my dad was, the good and the bad. There's never been a single moment where I was anything less than absolutely proud that he was my father and grateful for the life he afforded us. In the simplest of terms, he was the best, and the day he passed, a part of me died, something I always knew would happen. But I am comforted to know that he is no longer suffering, that he is in the company of all those who have preceded him, and in the loving arms of his Savior, whose love and promise he never once questioned, even in the darkest of times. I want to close in sharing a poem I have always loved, called Fisherman's Prayer. I pray that I may live to fish until my dying day, and when it comes to my last cast, I then most humbly pray, when in the Lord's great landing net and peacefully asleep, that in his mercy I be judged big enough to keep. Dad, thank you for my life, thank you for your love, thank you for the endless supply of jokes, one-liners, memories, and tall tales you have left us. I know you are one of God's best catches. We were going to watch a slideshow and then have people, if they wanted to share anything. I wonder if maybe we should do that in reverse. So if anyone at this time, I'm going to let my Aunt Janice close it out, but if there's anyone who wants to say anything.
I just want to share one thing. Hey, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. I know a lot of you guys came from really far away. I know a lot of us are experiencing this differently, and you know, my relationship that I have with my dad may not be the same that you had with yours, but he loved everyone in this room. And when I look at all the mementos that Donna's done everything for this event, by the way. And when I look at everything that she has, all the beautiful things that she has set up, all the mementos of him upstairs, I think he really had fun in life. No matter where he was, you know, whether it was in the Navy, maybe that wasn't so fun, you know, because you're just like a E2 or whatever. But he made fun of it, and he had fun every time he visited you, every time he went golfing with you guys. You know, he had fun everywhere he went, and I've been thinking to myself, like, what can I learn from my dad? There's so many things, but I just hope that my own memorial one day shows as much fun. I just think it's really important that all of us should live a little, have fun, find that balance in life between planning for the future but living for the moment. And I just hope everyone has a little fun today. It's not often that we all get to see each other, so let's try to have fun, a little fun today. It's what my dad would have wanted in his honor, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Tim.
Anyone else? Want
Alyssa.
Back off of what Kim said, that Donna, you have truly honored your father. So just what he would have wanted, like perfect, like what we did, you're doing the same exact thing, and it's beautiful. And he's proud, very proud.
Okay.
I would say I was the last of the three sons. I got to watch it all. Ricky, Gary, and then I was paying attention. So honestly, I was very lucky and blessed.
You were mom's favorite.
Yeah. She told Vicky. But I mean, Gary was so full of life. I remember he's in the Navy. Hey, David, coming down. I would drive straight from Jersey right to Florida. No stops. And he says, I got you a car. And then we'd be down in Fort Lauderdale and partying. Next thing you know, we're getting tear gassed. But, yeah.
Really?
Gary.
Shared bedroom, yeah. Oh, Lord.
I'm not pick the color. Anyway, I love her. He was bullshit.
What was the quote from Papa?
If bullshit was money, you'd be a millionaire. But that's what we love. It was always a story I never even remember.
I remember something, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, we were fishing on Union Lake, and we got close to a nest, I don't know, maybe a swan or something, I don't know. And he kept saying, get closer, the fish are over there, fish are over there. We got closer, the closer we got, the swan started standing up, coming right at us, full speed. I was scared to death, and Gary was laughing hysterical. And I knew he set me up. But there's so many I've had with Gary. But that is one that I will never forget.
I remember one time during one of his many scares that happened in the hospital. He couldn't have regular water, so I was sitting there and I was feeding him ice chips. This was years and years ago, but it was one of the times where we thought it was going to be it. We thought it was it. And I'm very upset, my dad's in the hospital, I'm feeding him ice chips. And in a moment like that where he is at what somebody would think of their lowest, he has enough humor in him to pretend to choke on the ice chips I'm feeding him. And when I start to get understandably scared and upset, he laughs at me. He just got off the ventilator, he can't talk, he had enough strength to prank and laugh at me.
That's hilarious.
Being with the girls for the last moments. He had that look of love. And he was so ready. He was so ready. He was a road.
For those of you who don't know, in the last moment, my mom had asked me like if she should come, and I was like, well, Mom, I don't think he's gonna ask for you true, but I don't think it's a turning way. So, he surprised the heck out of me, and he over and over again asked, and she was able to make it there. In the last moments, we were all just sitting around, like nothing, like it was just some stupid stuff, just like we always did. And he got his Cheesecake Factory, and I'm so grateful to. It was a lot for me to have his brothers and sisters there, telling me whatever decision you make. Like that meant a lot, and so it was a good moment.
It was as best as like a terrible moment could have gone, you know?
It's beautiful. You listen to the music you requested?
Yep.
You know what, vodka.
Did
That one ourselves.
Wait a minute, I missed that part.
Yes, yeah, he asked for vodka.
Well, I had a screwdriver on a sponge after side of it.
And then he had the money in his wallet. He took the money out of his wallet and
It was
started pointing at this person and that person. He was very concerned about.
It was
Getting away his
really
finances.
important he had a chance to do that because he actually got to in person bequeath. That meant a lot to him.
Yeah, I tell you what, he was smart.
He was really smart.
Working at Lakehurst on the new launch systems for the Navy, prototype stuff. Chemist, in good ways and bad.
And a lot of his project booths, if you haven't visited, also on here's links to his memorial website. Talks all about that, and you can leave a tribute. And there's actually, I came across in preparing for this, random cassette tapes that he used to record messages home in the Navy. And there's 3 of him as 18 years old recording home. That were just on some random cassettes. So